Hello, in this tutorial I will show you how to use pen tool for your animation in Photoshop and walk you through how to animate. So there are two things I would like you to know, that if you open an image, so I'm going to do it now. So if you open an image, it's going to be massive. Obviously we don't want animation in this size because it's big. So we're going to go onto image, canvas size, and I'm going to change it to 512. Press OK. And now we've got a size of the image that we can actually work with. Obviously it's a little bit compressed because it's a square now instead of a rectangle. However, it still looks like something we can work with. It's not deformed too much. So I want to unlock my initial layer by pressing the padlock, and I'm going to create a new layer. And because there is no background, I have to make one for when I turn off this image as a reference. So I go to my paint bucket tool. If you don't have paint bucket tool visible, it's hiding underneath the gradient tool. So all you have to do is you press hold, gradient tool, and then select paint bucket tool. And just press on the image. So now instead of a transparent layer, if we hide our animation reference, we will have a plain white layer. So now we have this, and we need to turn that into an animation. So we press that plus in your layer stack again. And this time we go to pen tool. Now pen tool is a really simple and easy way of filling in our pictures because we don't have to go into too much detail. We don't need a drawing tablet to complete this. So I zoomed in into my drawing by pressing Ctrl plus, and if you do Ctrl minus, it does the opposite. So Ctrl plus to see better. Now my pen tool is set to 2 pixels. I change it to 1. You can compare how that looks like, how the line looks like, if it's thick enough for you. I think I'm gonna go with a 2. It's a bit of a bolder line and easy to see. Now, when we start our animation, it's useful to break our character down into parts to help us animate it a bit later on. So the way this character breaks, I think it would be the chest without the sleeves of the dress, and then upper legs, lower legs, feet, and the same with arms. Face is going to be its own thing. So the way you animate it, the way you break it down is mostly up to you. I'm going to show you how I do it. So what I do is I just follow the lines of what I have drawn. As you can see, when I press hold, there are little levers that I can pull out, and thanks to them, I'm able to reproduce the curve that I have drawn on without making the drawing look like it's just made out of lines. So normally, your pen tool would probably fill your layer, but because I've pressed a white square with a red line through it, it's not doing that. And for now, we want to keep it like that. We just want to have the stroke on the black. So now that I've closed the line, so I've pressed on the square from the first stroke that I made, I have shape 1. So shape 1 is literally just what I've just done. I'm going to repeat this step for the other side of the arm. And now we have shape 2. So all I really have to do now is follow my guidelines that I have made for myself. So now I have blocked out the entire dress, and I will repeat this step for the rest of the body, and I'll come back to you once I've done that. So now this is how my broken down character looks like. So I've got about 13 different shape paths, and each one of them breaks the character into different areas. Now, your character may have less details to it, less things to break down. That's down to your design, really. There's no right or wrong way to do it, as long as it works, as long as it makes sense. So I'm going to name them as what they are, because there's so many of them that it's just going to make things much harder if I were to animate it. So another thing that I could have done is I could just cut that arm in half so it has two pieces. So you know where she would have elbows to enable like bending. Um, that's something for you to keep in mind. I didn't fill in the face because that's another thing that I will let you do yourself for some extra detail, depending what you really need to do. So now the next step is to select all of them. So because the first layer was selected, I just press Shift and scroll down all the way to the bottom layer and clicked on the layer, and that selected all of the layers on the way. So I'm pressing the folder and it's put it all in a folder. So I need to name that as well so I know what I'm working with. So I'm going to call this frame 1 because this is going to be my starting point of my animation. But before I go into it, I will try to obviously color them in. So I go back to the pen tool. You have to be in a pen tool. You can see the path, it's highlighted in blue. So you go into fill, you pick the color you'd like. So what you can do is you can select that for the entire dress color, so you don't need to have that black line if you don't want to. That bit is up to you, it's your stylistic choice. I think I'm not gonna have it. There is quite a lot of cartoons that don't have those either. Um, but let me use black. Obviously, later on, using pen tool again, you can add some extra details like highlights, um, shadows, some extra stuff going on top of it. So I'm really bad at picking random like what do you call it shade like shades. When you get rid of the line, you notice that some of your colors might be too dark. Or you can just fully remove the line, but I do like that extra depth it gives. I might just go with like a bit tanned color. The reason why I'm not doing it as I go along is because I want to see how this looks like before I finish it. Now, ideally, you would also start adding like details like highlights. So the head is actually just going to be the hair that she has. So to fix that, I could go back into the design. No, click on the tool and go back into it and change the settings. And select this whole thing again. Now this is what my character looks like. You may find that you have to do some adjustments. So this is my face shape. I go back to the pen tool, freeform pen tool. So perhaps you want to add some shadows. We go back to the pen tool, click where you want some extra color going on. Change that to a different shade. I might call it shadow or detail. Body detail. So now because my body shape has more than 2 layers, I'm going to put them in a folder. So when it comes to actually animating it, I know that if I'm going to animate something from there, the entirety of the shapes that are in the body folder are going to be transformed. So now we're gonna go into the animation bit. I will let you add your own details in your own time to the amount of obviously detail you want. So you need to ensure that your timeline is on. Most of the Photoshop files are not going to have it on by default. So the first step you do is you create frame animation and you press to create that frame. So now we have one frame and it's the frame we've started with. So now what we have to do is we have to take that frame, we have the folder with the frame 1 name, we have to change the name to frame 2, and we're going to start to introduce some movement. So I'm just going to make the first one invisible, and maybe we want the shoulders to move a bit. So I select all the shoulders, press Ctrl T. So that's a shortcut for transformation. So what I can do is I can rotate it slightly. And I press enter to approve it. Then I look perhaps for body, Ctrl T, rotate it as well a little bit. Head, Ctrl T, rotate it. You can also move it. Enter. So now we only have one frame. So we press the plus. And when we play it, you might notice that it's the same frame playing over and over again, right? Well, it's an easy fix for that one. So we go back to layer 1, so your timeline, the first frame. You turn the frame 2 off and you press frame 1 to be visible. And you did the same thing for frame 2 and turn the frame 2 folder that you made visible. So now when you play it, there is a bit of a movement going on that you've set on. If it's too fast, you may have to introduce some sort of delay and you play it again. So now it's more like a bit of a groovy, jazzy move to it, but slower. So you may not want to have this level of detail. So you may not want such sharp corners, sharp edges. You may want to go for something stylized, something pixelated. So here's the same thing I've made, the same character, but she's more pixelated if you look at her with the pen tool. So the difference is that she's on a 128 by 128. So now this 512 might be a little bit too big if we're making our game. And you may not like that this one is so pixelated. However, this style would be a little bit easier to actually animate, because if you don't like something, you can just simply erase and draw over yourself. So this one, I've not gone back and named anything. This is your lesson to actually name things, because then you'll be very confused and won't know what's going on. So here's me rotating the foot, and that's the neck. It's another foot. So it's Control T again. You can move it, enter to approve it, and you follow the same idea where the first group goes for the first layer, and for the second frame is the second frame. So now she's flapping her feet and it looks absolutely ridiculous. I get it. So you just slow it down. Obviously, you would add a bit more detail to it. So this is slowed down by 0.5 and the other one is slowed to 0.1. So all of this is mostly your stylized approach. You could make a bit smaller one, which is 64 by 64. It's tiny compared to the previous ones. But you may take, I don't know, maybe a brush and draw on the character the same way, except maybe you don't want to work from a scanned version. You feel comfortable like freestyling your character by hand. Now, mine might look bad because I don't have a drawing tablet on me, and it's just something that simple that I can make on my own. So great, I have this frame animation. I only have one layer, so what I can do is I can go the same route. So I created a copy. This time I go into an eraser. I don't need an eraser that big. And I can just need a background. I always forget about that. I need a background. So now I'm drawing on a layer copy. So I've erased some areas to create that illusion of movements. Now I go onto brush. Need to go back to the color I had. So to get to the color I had, I press I, and that's the eyedropper tool. And I press on where the pink is, and I press B to return to the brush, and I just draw the same thing again. So now when I add the plus, there is that illusion that the hair is blowing. Obviously, my my work is rather more extreme. You would add a frame here in between, in the middle. Oh. So I'm going to turn them two on and copy the second one. So this is where your naming comes in handy, because you can just literally name it so you know which frame is which one. Here I'm using F for frame. So F3. So this is the one I want to edit. So I click the eraser. I erase a bit that goes a little bit extreme. I check if they're all on in the correct order. So now, because I've added that extra layer, it looks like a hair is blowing in the wind. You would follow the same way of working with this type, with more defined, and the same with a bit, I'd say a bit less pixelated. It's only a little bit bigger than 64 by 64. This one is 128 by 128. Please put everything in an appropriate folder, so you know what's what, so you don't get confused. And try to look as much as you can for real life examples of the movements that you're doing. We're gonna have to do a walk. We're gonna have to do a jump. Sorry, idle, and I think jump. So you would look for references on how to draw those after you actually start and draw your character.